Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Process Podcast. Barbara Glancy, welcome to the podcast.
Edward, thank you very much for having me.
Is this weird being here?
It's super surreal. Yeah.
I mean, not just being in Hong Kong, but being on the podcast.
Being on the podcast because it's just not my forte, talking into a microphone and knowing it's going to be listened to by a few people. But yeah, it's good.
Well, I actually proposed this idea to you probably about a month ago, maybe even longer.
Probably longer.
And you were like, no, I'm coming to Hong Kong. Let's do it live. So I feel like maybe there's something deep down in you that actually really wanted to be behind the cameras and the lights.
Exactly. No, I think it was because our schedules didn't match up. Every time it was like, Ed, how about this? No, I'm sleeping. Okay.
Hey, it was 50-50. Your schedule was equally as bad as mine.
I'm picking Kai up. Can we do this? No.
I think we should start with a bit of background for listeners.
Yep.
Babs, you have been an employee of Coastal Fitness for
a long time.
11 years, 12 years.
Yeah, I want to say nearer 12.
So after Ant, you were the next longest serving coach.
Yeah. So when I first started, it was you, Ant, and Bratsy.
And then you were the next
one
to
join. And then it was me,
yeah. You are also a shareholder.
I am.
Of Coastal. You left Hong Kong shores to Bangkok, Thailand, 3 years ago.
Yeah, 2.5, so like August 2020.
Yeah, basically right before the pandemic kicked off. Was it after the pandemic?
So I think the pandemic was the beginning of 2020. And
that's right.
Yeah, we were stuck. Mike went first to Bangkok to start his new job. And Kai and I were supposed to go sort of a month after and weren't able to fly. So
that's right. You got stuck here for quite a long time. But ever since then, you have stayed a part of the process.
Yeah.
You are the chief of the Gymless program. So you're responsible for writing the programs, connecting with our memberships, promoting it and doing all that cool stuff.
Yeah.
And you were more recently a part of the build team, yourself and Liam. You still have worked with people individually as a part of the process. And Coastal, you were doing some coaching now in Bangkok.
Yep.
Kind of getting yourself back on the floor. What else have I missed in terms of an introduction of you? You have a husband, you have a child, Kai. You've mentioned both those two people already.
That's pretty much it. Like, feels like I've been part of Coastal for a really long time and obviously been in many different iterations of what Coastal Fitness and the process programming looks like. Not just with the team that we've got around us, but just how much we've kind of come from the very beginning when it was just the four of us, and then when Tom joined, the five of us. Valley Fit Days and being in the Valley in Happy Valley, just doing the boot camps and SMAC and stuff like that, and then to where we are now. And I think it's maybe since I've left the last 2.5 years, obviously taking a step back and not being in the environment every single day, I've seen like huge changes in just everything that we're about, like for the good, for the better. Like it's really, really cool. And like I said, I'm working with Liam. I haven't met him yet, so I'm looking forward to meeting him tomorrow when I come in. But yeah, no, it's cool. It's really cool to see. And just like I said, like from the coaching, from everything that we're trying to do, like just stepping it up, like even just how we are on social media, like we've just taken it to another level, which is really, really cool to see from being in Bangkok.
And I mean, you have been a part of all of that. I know it's been different for you. It's been different for all of us. You are Coastal Fitness and the Process's first ever remote employee.
Yeah, that's
really
true.
Who's like still with us,
still here. Can't get rid of me.
Yeah, and I remember just even thinking about like when you were talking about the early days of Coastal, when it was just myself, Ant and Bratsy.
Yeah.
You were actually a client of ours.
Yeah.
You were doing our SMAC, our outdoor group classes. We talk about SMAC all the time, like the glory days of like the early days of outdoor boot camps.
Yeah.
You were already a personal trainer.
Yeah.
I remember actually on my placement year, I think I've told you about this. So, I was in my third year of university, came back to Hong Kong to play rugby.
Yeah.
And you were living with one of my teammates, Varty at the time.
Yeah.
And I remember you were sat on the sofa doing your NASM personal training exam.
Way. I
remember you sitting there doing it. And I was like, oh, what are you doing? I think we'd literally just met. Or I'd kind of known you through school because we went to the same school system.
Yeah.
And you were like, oh, I'm doing an exam for personal training. I remember even thinking then, I was like, wow, that's really cool. She's going to be a personal trainer. and then like would have
That's
never
my dream job.
yeah, would have never foreseen that 3 years later we'd be working together. Yeah, I remember you were a client, you were already coaching people in the club gym. You were doing, I remember you used to see you do that sometimes at Happy Valley.
So it was funny, like I was doing a lot of sports coaching for kids, and then like you said, I was doing my kind of personal training courses on the side. And then there sort of became like a bit of a conflict in terms of the timings that I could do personal training often clashed with the times I could do swim coaching, which was the majority of my income at that point in time. And then I love swim coaching and I love teaching these kids, but it definitely got a bit monotonous. So I was looking for something else. And that's when I moved into, personal training. I actually wasn't allowed to coach at football club. I got in trouble just for giving someone advice because I was a known like qualified personal trainer. I was actually just showing someone how to foam roll or something. So I was just doing like, I think we all were a bit freelance and going to people's homes and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I remember asking you to be a coach if you wanted to join the team.
Yeah.
We were in the coffee shop at the football club.
Having our buffets.
Yeah, having our one plate buffets. That definitely weren't one plate.
Pile it up.
Yeah. And I remember you didn't really hesitate very much on the question. It was kind of like you asked me like 2 questions, classic Babs, to be honest. Didn't even ask about pay, what's going to look like. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah. And I remember who'd have thought 13 years later,
I know,
we'd still be here. Crazy. Okay, well, Babs, this episode is going to be about your story.
Yep.
And I'd like to go as far back as you want to go back.
Okay.
But I just love hearing about what makes a person who they are today. The connecting the dots in terms of childhood, young adulthood, and everything that happens in between, and what, how that contributes to making us the person we are. So where do you want to start?
Ooh, where do I want to start? I don't know. Like personal training wasn't ever something that I was like, oh, that's what I'm going to be when I grow up. But I definitely have always been a very active person. As a child, probably because I'm a bit older, we didn't have all the things that we have now.
No iPhones.
No iPhones,
iPads.
nothing like that. So it was basically get home from school, dump your bag and go outside and play. Just hang out with friends and just be then shouted off the balcony like mum would say at dinner time, and that's how we get to know we've got to go home. Always just super active. Thinking about like primary school, like I think we were playing like at school for the girls. It was like netball and rounders. And then me and one other girl, we actually just played football and rugby as well with the boys team. But actually it was quite painful being tackled. So I didn't really like it very much. So I stopped.
Were you an early starter? Were you an early bloomer?
In my mind or from memory, I don't think I was ever super fast or was really coordinated.
You weren't like this size at like 5 years old, no?
No. I wasn't this size. No, okay. I was quite small when I look at pictures of myself. But always super active, and I just love playing sport, watching sport, just moving.
Where did that come from? Do you think?
I mean, I don't know really. Like Dad was pretty active, and we would go out and do things with him. But I never watched him play sport. He had finished playing rugby and things before I was born. I think in school, primary school, but maybe more so as I went into high school, it was just the sort of the teachers that I was around maybe sort of saw something in me and encouraged me to sort of try out for different things, I think we had inter-house. I'm sure you had that at West Island School too. So you could sort of try like every sport that was out there. Like I never knew what water polo was and could give it a go. And just things like that. So you just sort of like, I want to give that a go. And so you could sort of do everything. And then, I think just certain teachers, maybe they liked hockey, for example. So you kind of maybe were encouraged a bit more by them to play like, try out for the school team and that kind of thing. And just kind of went from there, really. Because
I feel like, you got, so there's 3 sisters.
Yeah,
you
3 sisters, brother. 2 brothers.
2 brothers, of course.
Sorry, 2 sisters, 2 brothers.
2 sisters, 3 girls altogether, though.
Yeah, there's 5 of us.
But, when I think about certainly the girls in family, like the Mountains have always been like a sporty family.
Yeah.
And I think, growing up, we were both members of the football club. I played rugby and football for them. You played hockey. So I'd, kind of always be in and around each other. Yeah. Around on the sports fields or in a sportsman's bar. But I know, what, surely there's something there that has, led to, because we haven't even talked about this yet, but you then went on to play hockey for the Hong Kong national team.
Yeah.
Probably like were regarded as one of Hong Kong's best female players. You know, played there for a really, really long time. And I'm sure we could probably still step in and do it. So, you know, it's not like it's kind of weird even just thinking about you saying at secondary school, teachers just encouraged me to play hockey, and then you ended up having this amazing hockey career, playing in the Asian Games and all this amazing stuff. Surely there's got to be more there, no?
I don't know. Like, I know growing up, like you said, sort of with siblings, again, we're all sort of active and just sort of like to play outside with all of our friends. And then I think maybe as we did get a bit older, like maybe because I was the oldest and I was into sports, and, you know, after school, even if it wasn't like an organized thing, we'd just stay behind and play basketball or something like that. I don't know if that sort of influenced Amanda and Katie, so my two sisters, to be more interested in sport. But I think also like we all had sort of similar coaches and teachers at school that maybe were also quite encouraging, and maybe someone that you sort of looked up to, and if they sort of had a bit of like faith in you that you'd be able to, you know, make the school team or whatever, and you've sort of, okay, well maybe if they think I can, maybe I can just go. But also I think, I don't know if you were the same, like all of my friends were playing netball. Like I didn't love netball, but I loved playing with my friends, so I wanted to try out hockey. I actually only started in high school. I didn't do mini hockey or anything like that.
Really?
I think I was taken down to mini hockey at football club by a friend's mum. We all went together. I remember the four of us, so me, Katie, and her two kids. And I remember not liking it, and so I didn't carry on. So yeah, just in high school, I started in year 7. And yeah, just obviously that was sort of, like you sort of alluded to, that's the sort of sport I stuck with, kind of into university and onwards.
I'd say of all the women that I've met in my life, you are the most well-rounded sports woman that I've ever met.
Oh, well, thank
you.
So
I don't mean that in terms of athlete. I don't mean to diss on your athleticism, because you are very athletic. But like, we can play a game of handball, tennis, basketball, volley. Like, it doesn't matter what sport. You know, we have a little duel, and we can always have like a good game. Decent, and it's actually, I think, a really great trait of yours. Bit of a digression here, but you have Kai as your son. He's 6 years old now. You know, you just alluded to the fact that we grew up in a time where we didn't have iPhones and social media, and, you know, a lot of our time was spent playing and moving. Is that something you think about, you know, like raising a child now in this day and age? Yeah,
100%. Like, I think maybe if you ask lots of new parents to a brand new baby, they've got all these grand ideas. We're not going to give them an iPad and all of this kind of thing. And to be honest, I was one of those people. Like, you sort of glance over at lunches or whatever, and the kids next to you have all got like an iPad to keep them quiet. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to do that because that's not good and all of this. But actually, at the end of the day, like, that's definitely something that we did resort back to, because it meant that you could actually sit and have a meal with someone and Kai was entertained, because it's not fair for him at sort of 1 to be expected to be involved in a conversation. So I definitely feel like my maybe judgment back then has definitely changed, but it's also something that I try to be really aware of. Obviously I like to train and that kind of thing, and I think especially during lockdown, he'd see me out at the back in the gym and doing things, and he'd like to join in. Like, I was not giving him like ridiculous weights or 10 kg things to lift, but he just want to see what I was doing and just be out the back with me. And I guess with the fact that he's able to do sort of activities now, he's got such a range of things that he's got available to him that we maybe didn't have. But definitely, like, obviously asking his opinion, and there was definitely ones that he's picked, but there's definitely so I think at the moment he's doing gymnastics and swimming. Swimming's more of a safety thing for me than anything else. Obviously we're in Asia where, you know, we're around water. We've got a small swimming pool at home, so just being safe in the water, and knowing that he's really confident, which I think he's always been, because Mike and I were both sort of like, from when he was small and able to go in the water, it was like, right, you're in. So yeah, it's definitely something that's important to us without being sort of overbearing, I hope.
Gymnastics, swimming, anything else? Yeah,
gymnastics, swimming. Because Mike's in a rugby background. I'm obviously mostly a team sport, so hockey. We know how kind of beneficial sort of being involved in a team really was for us growing up. So he plays football at the moment, just at school with his friends after school, which he's really got into. So he's a Liverpool supporter.
Is he?
You can't name any Liverpool players bar Mo Salah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Let's take us back to you then, Babs. Yeah. So, secondary school, you're getting into hockey. Where does that take you? Tell us about your hockey days.
Yeah, so like I said, I didn't grow up doing mini hockey or anything like that. So secondary school, when I went to island school, started hockey in year 7. And to start with, it was just playing in PE lessons and then joining the school team. So I think back then it was like a year 7 team, a year 8 team, and then possibly going to like D grade, C grade, B grade, and then A grade when you're sort of in the...
So for people listening, that's like your first 2 years of secondary school, then the next 2 years of secondary school, and then A grade is your last 2 years. It's like the competition that we compete in sport in Hong Kong,
Yeah. And then I think, I want to say, maybe when I was about 13, I started playing at a football club. So... they've got like a league in Hong Kong for many sports, but obviously hockey was the league that I was playing in, and I could represent football club as in one of their teams. So I think I started back in the day like in the E team, and then just slowly moved myself my way up to the A's. Eventually, kind of maybe a couple of seasons later, and then around the same time of sort of starting playing club hockey, we've got an opportunity to do all the age groups. So I'm sure for like the rugby as well, it's similar where you had maybe like an under 15s team into an under 16s maybe, or an under 18s team. I think we had under 21s, but it was difficult for us just because of a lot of people you leave for university. So having under 21s was quite tricky. And then obviously filtering that into like the national team. So kind of got into that setup, and there was the trials and all of that, and you sort of go and you're really nervous and you've got your bib with your number on and people are watching you play and that kind of thing. But to be honest, I kind of really enjoyed that sort of bit of pressure. Like I've always I've been competitive, maybe sometimes too competitive, but I've always sort of felt like I do thrive in that kind of situation where a bit more is expected from you and there's something riding on it.
And where did that take you? Where did your hockey go?
Hockey went. That was a sport I chose to play when I was at uni. I went to Birmingham. I didn't pick Birmingham as just to go to hockey because I didn't get a scholarship or anything like that. But the course I wanted to do was good, and the hockey setup they had was really good. And that was probably, obviously you go when you're 18. Well, I went when I was 18. I didn't take a gap year. So it was really kind of eye-opening going from being one of the...
big fish in a small pond.
Yeah. And also being deemed to be like, not a dirty player, but like being able to like hold my ground. Maybe I like to look at skills online and try and practice and emulate them. And I don't think many of the other ladies were doing that. Obviously, they had other jobs to do and that kind of thing. They weren't sort of at school. I went to uni. I think you go in and you're sort of like, oh, I've got these expectations, but I didn't really play that much in my first year. Like I went to obviously all the practices and just got little games here and there. And I remember, I think it must have been going into maybe my second year or maybe my third. We'd done a competition with Hong Kong and actually come away and managed to win it. And all of a sudden that sort of switched like in my coach's mind that, oh, just because you're not an English international. Oh, you're from Hong Kong. Okay, now you've won this competition, which was actually a really small competition, but okay, you can actually play and you've got a bit of a more of an opportunity versus her making the assumption just from where I came from, basically. And maybe that's kind of me with my chip on my shoulder, sort of like, oh, I'll show you. And that's maybe also always maybe where I've had a bit of like, just because I'm from this smaller place, that maybe hockey's not a massive thing that you don't hear about the Hong Kong national team kind of making waves in the hockey competitions, but I still can compete and want to show what I can do. And then how long did you end up representing Hong Kong for? Oh, I don't actually know. You're literally beating around the bush on this question so much. Just when you tell us how long were you, because you don't talk about this much. I think in the same way I don't really talk about my rugby days much, but like you achieved a lot. Yeah, like when I do look back, and I've done a lot of reflection since being in Bangkok, I've got some really, really good memories, and I'm just super lucky that something that I was super passionate about and loved, I was able to travel play around the world and play against some of the best players and like compete against them. I think Hong Kong, like I said, is a bit smaller as a hockey nation. And so we weren't that competitive with, say, like a China, a Korea, and a Japan. But for me, just like having the opportunity to go to Asian Games, go to a couple of East Asian Games and play against these people, like they're just like another level. But it really excited me to get to compete against them. And it was sort of really, really cool for me, even though sometimes we'd lost like 18-0, which is nothing to be really that proud of. But you've got to look and see where you can take those small wins or victories. And I think I was always someone that was I would reflect quite a lot on my performance, where I thought I did really well, where I thought I could get better next time we sort of came up against these people, all these players. And then, so I think it was the first East Asian Games we played. We had an Australian coach who came over to help us coach for that competition. It was a really kind of eye-opening, again, sort of having that sort of next level of a coach. And through him, his assistant, she started coaching in Australia for the Northern Territory. So back in the day, I'm not too sure if they still have this competition or if they still use it for what they use it for back then. They have the Australian Hockey League. So it's not a professional league. Well, I don't know. I didn't get paid, so I don't know. It might have been really professional, but not just for me. So I went over because of her. She offered me an opportunity to play for Northern Territory. So I was based in Darwin, and you basically play all the other states. So again, that was like another kind of big step up in terms of just having those players around you who, they weren't all playing for Australia, but you'd often play against, when you played the other states, basically the whole like Australian national team. And again, like it was just so cool coming from Hong Kong that I've never really thought I'd have an opportunity to do that. So yeah, I just loved it and just like tried to get stuck in, settled in, and just really like make the most of the opportunity that I'd been given. And then again, like it's again just like luck, like really sort of from playing there, knowing a few of the girls. One of the girls was a goalkeeper, and I think she started playing in Germany. So, I was back in Hong Kong doing random little jobs, like we sort of said before, like some freelance PT, some swim coaching. I was working at Lululemon and all these other bits and pieces.
I remember that.
Yeah. And then I got an opportunity, just chatting on one of those messenger things back in the day. Or do you want to come over to Germany, to Frankfurt? And I was like, what? She's like, I'm playing for Eintracht Frankfurt, which is a really big German football club. So if you like football there, you'd know about Eintracht. And they've got obviously like football clubs, sort of other sports. So I went over and played, like half a season there, outdoor season in Germany. And that was actually the first time I was paid to play. So it wasn't a huge amount, but it was like, living the dream, like, you're sort of professional somewhat. So I just loved it. And again, just sort of experiencing different cultures, different ways of playing the game. Unfortunately, I didn't really know any German. So some of the team talks were a little bit tough. But just like putting yourself out there. I just loved the opportunity to compete and sort of see where I was at, really. Because I think I was never someone, I don't think, maybe ask other people. If I was like a really kind of cocky person, I think I was quietly confident and sometimes loudly confident, maybe borderline.
I think you're a very confident athlete.
But I was just super, super excited to like compete with and against these people that are, just another level from what you're used to playing. Because I think playing in the league here, I liked, but it did get frustrating, and I definitely think my frustrations came out.
Were those frustrations because of the ability level of the people around you?
Yes and no. So I think football club's been pretty dominant. And, I'm someone that really, I think you can't be perfect, but you can always aim to be sort of better than maybe what you put out there. And there's always things you can take away and improve on. And I think we could probably turn up, do whatever we wanted, and still win the game 1-0. But in my mind, we're just so much better than that. And I think that's sort of where my frustrations came from. And I was like, no, no one's taking this seriously, you know, I'm the only person. And
you're a professional playing in
yeah,
amateur league
whereas
almost.
I was projecting what I think we should have been doing onto everyone else. And I think the same sometimes with like Hong Kong training. Maybe we were slightly overtrained. We had to give up a lot of our time. So it was amazing that we had this opportunity to play in these tournaments, but it was a big sacrifice. Like I had to, obviously with personal training, you've got to work when people have finished their work. And there was definitely times where I couldn't. I had to turn down work and money and income because I was going to train over at King's Park for sort of 3 hours from like 7 till 10 or whatever it was. And that was nearly every day. So I didn't really have very much balance. And I think my frustrations definitely came out a lot of the time. And taking it out on other people. I think I wanted to lead, but I didn't have the communication skills. I didn't have the tools to be a good leader at that point in time. I think as I got older, I sort of relaxed a bit. But I think I started doing a bit more, finding out a bit more about how to be a good leader, and whether that was reading books or just like hearing other people or seeing, you know, clips of other athletes and them talking about their captains or whatever it was.
What were the biggest changes that you implemented?
I just think I was more mature.
What does that mean?
Obviously as I got older, but I think I was super, super frustrated with the fact that it was a team sport, and I think I assumed that everyone should be giving the same level, and I didn't understand and I couldn't process why people weren't giving everything to practice. And it was just like a bit of a joke for them. And I couldn't cope with that. Like I really got frustrated, and, you know, sometimes I think, I wish someone maybe would have come over and said like, hey, you're actually all right. But at the same time, I probably wouldn't have said, no, I'm not all right. Because I think I just wasn't in that place at that time. Like I would have just been like, of course I am. And
you put a brave face on. And
yeah, no, for sure, definitely. But yeah, going back to that, I think I don't know if you're just getting a bit more perspective on things when, as you get older, like sort of going away and playing hockey overseas definitely like helped me raise my level, but it also put me around other people that do things a bit differently. No one knows who you are, so you can kind of just blend in, and, you know, maybe people had expectations of me in Hong Kong, or maybe those expectations are something that I put on myself, that I thought that other people thought this of me. And I know that definitely like playing overseas, I was a much better teammate than I was for a lot of the time, like playing in Hong Kong. And like when I do look back, that's definitely something that I wish I could have changed. Like I said, there's so many things I look back on when I played hockey that I love, and it's like some really good memories. And then there's also things I'm like, you know, I wish I had spoken to this person a bit differently, or I wish I'd maybe learned a bit more about how to be a leader, or like what makes a good captain, or how to talk to different people, because we're not all the same. Even though we're on a team, we're all different people and react differently. I don't know if, you know, because I like watching sport, and back then it was sort of male role models, and that's how they kind of spoke to the rest of their team. So I think sometimes my message was, the intent of the message was, yeah, we're all doing this together for each other, but the way it came across wasn't that way at all. It was like really aggressive and like, just not, I didn't have the skills to be able to speak to people in the way that person A needs to be spoken to compared to person B. So that's definitely like something that I look back on.
I think about leadership all the time. I think naturally because it's the position that I'm in, and it's also been an area that I've really struggled in many times over the years. And I'm thinking back to, you know, when I was the under-16s, under-19s Hong Kong rugby captain, and you know, always captained my school teams and my club teams throughout pretty much my 16-year-old onwards. And it's funny, like you get the captain's honour, and suddenly I would feel like I'd have to evolve into this new persona, which would really emulate the captains that I would probably see on television, which is just like
in your face.
Really it was aggression, actually. And I thought my style of leadership back then, and perhaps it still is now, but in a different way, was like, I need to lead by doing, and people will be motivated and follow me as a leader because they'll see me putting my body on the line, or they'll see me put myself out there. And now I think about leadership in such a different way.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's about building relationships, and it's actually, I should retract that statement, because it's not about anything, because there are a million ways to lead and all could be super successful.
Yeah. Which is why it's so hard, right?
Which is why it's so hard. Yeah. And, you know, not every single person responds to the same type of leadership. But it sounds like you've done like a lot of reflecting on your hockey days.
Yeah.
And I just think that's, you've done a lot of reflecting in general over the recent years.
Yeah.
I know we've had some conversations about it.
Yeah.
But can I just ask, to end the hockey chapter, why did you decide to stop playing?
So I think I remember you talking about going to Asian Games, and so I went to one Asian Games, to East Asian Games, and I remember we were training to go to the next Asian Games
after East Asian Games
Doha.
in Hong Kong?
Yeah, so I played East Asian Games in Hong Kong, and I think the next Asian Games, I can't remember which country it was supposed to be in, but I remember we trained the whole pre-season to build up to it. And I don't know how soon before we were supposed to go, we were told by the government that basically they weren't going to send us, that we were basically a bit of a joke, and they didn't think that we represented Hong Kong well enough by being beaten 18-0. So we didn't go. And I think from then it was a bit frustrating, obviously giving all that time and then ending up not being able to go to a tournament that that was going to be, you know, okay, maybe I'll call it a day after that. So I think we had a couple of other smaller tournaments, maybe one in Bangkok, maybe Asia Cup or something like that, and then another one. And then I think just because I've been doing it for so long and not really had a break from it, I could definitely feel like a bit of that passion and love sort of dying off, I suppose. And then I think because we were obviously, I'd started working at Coastal by then, and we'd sort of all kind of got into a bit of CrossFit, and this is quite cool because we're all so new to this. We're just a complete novice, and I've got to try and get this Olympic lift. I've also got to try and get this gymnastics. I've got to try and get this skipping and all the other stuff that you've got to try and do. And that really excited me because I think for hockey, I could have carried on getting better, but I think I was kind of done with it, really. And even obviously when I was pregnant with Kai, I didn't play because it's just not something I wanted to do. But coming back into it, it was definitely like a way more social thing for me versus, this is my sport and this is what I'm training for really seriously. That kind of did a sort of a shift between, you know, doing CrossFit and then obviously not doing it when I was, again, like at a high level when I was pregnant. But
can I ask, when you stopped playing, and you started focusing on your coaching more, was there like an identity crisis at any point? You know, did you ever feel that you were the hockey girl and now what are you if you're not the hockey girl?
I know what you're saying, and I do remember a feeling of that weird like, now what? And that was after East Asian Games in Hong Kong. I remember finishing up all my bags, got back to my flat, which I was living on my own at that point, and just opening the door, putting my stuff down, and just being like, what am I going to do? What am I going to train for? And just being a bit lost for a little while. And I was like, okay. But after hockey, I decided not to take it as seriously and definitely being more of a social thing. I didn't actually have that. But I think that's because I chose not to play as much, or I had other priorities, not because I was forced into it. I think sometimes when you're forced into making that decision, when you're maybe not ready to, I can understand why that's really, really challenging. But yeah, like even now when I've moved to Bangkok, I think they do have hockey there, like a small league and things like that. But I've never really had the interest to do it, and I don't really miss it that much. Like, it's funny because I think I should, because it was such a huge part of my life. But yeah, like I'm really happy where I left it. Like I said, there's maybe things I would have done differently. There's things, you know, obviously the disappointment of not going to Asian Games for the second time. But yeah, I think I really achieved everything that I wanted to achieve playing the game.
How old were you when you got into coaching?
Ooh. Like personal training coaching or like
no, like maybe like properly coaching when you made that decision to.
Yeah. So maybe when I met you, I don't even know how old I would have been because I'd been in and out. I'd been playing hockey in Australia. I finished uni. I played hockey in Australia a couple of times. I think I might have even been in Germany and then started working.
About 2012.
Yeah.
About 10 years ago.
Yeah.
What did you ever foresee that this would be your career? Because we have a lot of coaches listen to this podcast and a lot of conversations arise around like, how do I start my career? Where do I go? What do I do?
Yeah.
Did you know it was going to be something you do forever?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I was coaching kids, which I get is very different to coaching adults.
But it's still coaching.
But it's still that sort of teaching environment. Even going into uni, that was always my idea, like do my 3-year degree and then go into a teaching course, and obviously changed my mind. I thought, I'm not going to do something for the sake of doing it. I really want to do it if I'm going to do it. So 3 years, and but then I ended up coaching straight away, so I could have done it, I suppose. But yeah, so I love that. Love being around the kids and we did basketball, football, swimming, a bit of like multi-sports camps and things like that. And then, just got into coaching, obviously more adults, obviously during personal training. And then that kind of evolved into like boot camps when I started doing more of like the SMAC style workouts, which was our boot camp in the Happy Valley. And then sort of as we evolved into more a CrossFit style of coaching, like those group classes. So it's cool, like I think a bit like CrossFit, having so many different moving parts, sort of coaching's similar in that way, where there's so many nuances to it and so many different goals of each of your clients. You don't have everyone that just wants to go to the games in CrossFit. You've got other people that are coming back from having a baby, or other people who are coming back from an injury, or other people who are training for a different sport and want a bit of support or help around some strength and conditioning or something like that. So I think it's always been something that's really interesting to me on how you can, I guess, like help people get the most out of everything that they want to achieve, I suppose, like, and help them.
Yeah. I mean, you at the same time as me, we kind of committed ourselves quite heavily to being athletes in CrossFit.
Yeah.
You went to 2 regionals or 3 regionals?
2 regionals. I think a bit
Asia
like yourself, I qualified maybe just as an individual.
That's right.
In my first year when we all went as a team.
Yeah.
I think that was definitely not something that I would have had a very good time at.
Very happy.
So we went team, and then obviously we didn't know at that point they were going to change the regional format and we would join in with Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah.
But in my mind it was like, okay, I've had my team experience at one regional. Next year I really want to try and push and be in that sort of female top 20 in Asia or top 30 or whatever it was, to try and go as an individual to regionals. And then we got changed obviously to joining with Australia and New Zealand. And
you had to finish top 10 in Asia that year, right?
Yeah.
What did you finish?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think. I think I would have qualified if it say top 20 or 30, but I definitely was nowhere near.
That was a clean
10.
and jerk year.
Yeah.
That was a horrendous year for me.
So yeah, we went team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, the thing is, I think from all your sporting background in hockey, like you were just always a natural competitor. And I think it's interesting in the landscape that we exist in here in Hong Kong, many females get into CrossFit, and it's kind of their first sport.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They didn't have perhaps like a sporting childhood or athletic endeavors as a young adult. So they may have the physical ability to do the sport, but they don't have that innate competitive ability in the sport.
Yeah.
That's something that's like acquired through just years of competing from a young age. And it's like knowing how to handle wins, how to handle losses, how to be on a team, how to like apply yourself to training. There's so many things that we just assume.
Yes.
That you pick up. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But you always had it. And I think when I look back at that team that went to regionals in 2014, where we finished one spot off the podium, mental.
Yeah.
We were
Mental.
all, Emily was a hockey player, played good level hockey.
Yeah.
You played high level hockey. All our guys were athletes, apart from Bratsy, kind of. No offense, Bratsy. He was kind of Bratsy was an athlete. Footballer. And then probably Soph was probably the only non-athlete because she was a dancer, but, a very talented athlete, but didn't probably have the competitive background. But yeah, it was always fun competing with you, because it was like we'd been competing on the same team forever just because we both got it, I think, because of our backgrounds.
Yeah. No, I can definitely agree with that. And especially sort of, like you said, coaching elsewhere, sort of people who maybe didn't grow up in a sport. It's really very obvious when you sort of talk about anything about competition. Everything's so new and something that they've never even thought about, let alone experienced before. So I do think having that experience playing a sport in how to handle competition, how to handle nerves, even like the mental side to a competition is super important and beneficial, even if it's not necessarily CrossFit, going into CrossFit with that background.
Yeah. So 2016, which is the year we first went to, second year of Oz Regionals, but that's where you fall pregnant 2015, I believe.
Yeah.
So remember I worked with you through that pregnancy.
Yeah.
You have a baby, which is really weird, by the way, because at this point I'm still thinking we're all kids.
Yeah.
Like we're all kids running this gym. We're all having like an amazing time surrounded by our friends, and suddenly you're like, Ed, I'm pregnant. And I'm like, what? That's what adults do, Babs.
Ant was the funniest with as my bump started getting bigger. He just wouldn't be near my bump. Because sometimes obviously the baby like moves and he was like, it's an alien. And obviously that shows our maturity level and our sense of humor, I suppose.
Yeah. But did that, because it really, that's where your competitive endeavors in the sport kind of stops. You have many mums give birth to their first child and they have this ambition to want to get back to be competitive again. But I feel like you kind of took a bit of a left turn there, and you focused a little bit more on health and longevity, and things just evolve. So talk us through that.
Yeah, I think you're right. After I had Kai, I'm quite a realist, and I knew what it would take for me to be somewhat competitive in CrossFit. Strength was always something that was a weakness of mine, and the weights were just going heavier and heavier and heavier. And I knew that already before I had Kai, lifting those weights was a challenge. And obviously having not really trained that way, looking for PRs and trying to get strong, just trying to, move around. When I was pregnant, I was very lucky that I was able to train, but obviously your focus is completely different. And I knew very soon that I wouldn't be able to give the time and energy to be able to do that. So I think I was just like, okay, I'm happy that I got an experience at these regionals. Going as a team, it was just so much fun. But yeah, it was definitely not something that I was going to be able to carry on doing at that level. And
was that an easy decision? Was that a hard decision?
Yeah, again, I think it was a really easy decision for me. And I think after having Kai, I was able to come back, train, and that's what I love. I just love being able to come in, train, do my session, and then go back home or coach another client or whatever it was. And then being able to train in the gym, I always think it allows me to do everything I want to do outside the gym. So, before I left, I started doing a lot more trail running. And I was never really a runner, but because I'd sort of got some base level of aerobic fitness through hockey, like being able to change direction. So on the trails, it wasn't so foreign to me, just being able to do that. And then I love being outside, hiking, anything on the water, not necessarily swimming, but paddleboarding, kayaking, and just having the, upper body strength from training in the gym allows me to be able to do those things, which I think, it was maybe a bit of a change from being really competitive in sports or CrossFit to just being able to enjoy life, really.
Talk me through the move to Bangkok.
Okay, so yeah.
Can I just say something there?
Yeah.
Because I feel in the 12 years I've known you, maybe even longer, I feel like, and I think both of us have had a lot of growth. We've both seen each other's journeys unfold, and
100%.
We can, I think, resonate a lot in each other.
Yeah.
Because I think we were very similar. I think our probably inability to communicate was very similar.
Yeah.
Funnily, we never had any run-ins because I think we just always made it work for each other.
Yeah.
But it was probably with others. That's definitely where I had. That's where I had, the run-ins. That's where I would struggle. But I can definitely resonate with a lot of, the younger athlete in you, the captain in you, the competitor in you. Like I see a lot of those traits in me, and I think we both, just been on a big journey of growth. And I think I haven't seen more growth in you than I have in the last 2.5 years. And a lot of that has just been through small conversations, even if it's just a couple of messages on WhatsApp exchanges or on Instagram. We haven't had that many like long in-depth calls, but I can just see it. So I don't even know where you want to start here, but what was it like making that shift over and move over to a brand new country and moving away from the company you've been working for 12 years and the pandemic and everything?
Yeah, everything. Yeah, I mean, it was obviously a decision that we made, Mike and I, what was going to be best for us and our family. And I think the opportunity that he got given or that came up with for work was a really good one for his career. So I think it was something that we really wanted to explore. Obviously, things in Hong Kong were a bit challenging at that time, not just because of COVID. And we were sort of ready for a bit of a move, something a bit different. We decided on Bangkok. We had a few other options, and I think Bangkok was the place for us as a family that we saw as our best option. So I can't remember when we decided. We went a couple of times to have a look, and we looked at some different places to live, different areas, different schools, and then finally made the move. I think Mike went February 2020. And then, as I said before, we were supposed to go sort of April or March maybe during that Easter holiday. And obviously because of COVID, a lot of the places around the world sort of started shutting their borders to sort of try and control it because it was just everywhere. So Thailand were one of those. They shut all their international borders, so we weren't able to get in. So I think, if I'm honest, I think it was easier for us being here at home with everything that we knew compared to when Mike was there sort of in this new country by himself. And then when we've eventually got there, I think we had 2 weeks quarantine in the hotel, and so that was an interesting experience. Yeah, and I mean, again, it's just one of those things that we had to do. So you just get on with it. Like, there's definitely times, and it wasn't always we're in this positive mindset, but you can either sort of cry about it and get really upset and frustrated, or you just know that it's 14 days and you just do it. I think we were very lucky in Thailand that you actually had like yard time. So once we did our PCR and you were negative, you're actually allowed to go outside of your room in this sort of outdoor area.
You had like an hour, didn't you?
Yeah. So you could go out, and when they would come and clean your room. So I think that definitely helped. Obviously doing it with like my son. I don't know how old he was at that point, maybe 4.5, whatever it was. Yeah, 4. So that was definitely needed. It was definitely a madhouse in our room. And then obviously like when we got out, he was pretty much straight into school the next day. We went in and he settled really quickly, which I think was a really big relief. And at that point, Bangkok was quite normal. Like there weren't really many restrictions, bar maybe wearing masks and I think maybe bars or something like that. So, and then you're just like adrenaline just takes you through. Everything's new and exciting. Obviously, we hadn't seen Mike for ages, so it was really cool to be able to like explore our new neighborhood, go for coffee and all of these things, and then even explore like different parts of Thailand that, having only really been to Bangkok and Phuket, maybe Koh Samui once, like to be able to have access and really easy to get to. So I think the first sort of little bit was like really refreshing and like fun, and obviously COVID, more cases, different variations or variants wherever they are, and then we had like a lockdown, and I think we still didn't know a huge amount of people. We'd kind of made a few friends, but obviously having been here forever, like definitely nowhere near the amount or closeness to what we had here. I think I was online doing online learning with Kai most days for like most of the day, like lots of parents around the world. And I found that really challenging. Obviously I wasn't coaching in person at all, so you didn't have that sort of interaction with other people. I still was doing a bit of stuff online, but it's quite different, like sending a program and asking for them to send you a video of what they're doing and then kind of looking at it and sending them kind of feedback. Very different to doing that in person, which is what, you know, you love, just making those connections and talking to people and getting a reaction immediately and that kind of thing. So yeah, I suddenly went from coaching pretty full-time here, loving life. This was awesome, just really good place, good balance. Going to a new place where, okay, there's this virus, but it's not super serious, but we can still explore and get to know places, to suddenly like, boom. And that's sort of few months from like, yeah, April to June, really, maybe July, I found really tough. And I think that was probably when we had conversations about Gymless and taking over that programming from you, who was obviously getting really busy, and we added Elite. So that was kind of, you know, taking a lot more focus for you to program. So I think that came at like just the best time for me, that I needed something that to really do for myself, because I felt like I'd sort of lost that really. Like, again, like I could try to see the positives and like the amount of time I got to spend with Kai, and, you know, I definitely learned a lot, because the way you have to teach someone to do things at that age is very different to anything I've really kind of experienced. But yeah, it was really challenging. And I think,
can I ask, Babs, was a challenge, it sounds like, was it a lack of purpose?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I actually said that to Mike, like, I just feel like I've got no purpose right now. Like, the things I'm really passionate about and love doing, I feel like just I don't have control over, and I can't go and do those things. So like I said, I just like to be outside in nature, and in Bangkok you've really got to go find those places, and with everything being closed it was quite hard. You're just sort of like in this big city bubble where people are really scared, because obviously people don't know what this virus is.
Well, everyone was scared at that point in time.
It was just like a really negative vibe, and I think it, even though again like you're trying not to let outside things affect you, but I think there's a point where it just does.
Did it ever make you resentful to Mike for like bringing, essentially being the reason for you guys going over there? I mean, I can imagine that putting strain on a relationship. Or did it never get to that point?
We kind of had a conversation of like, you know, obviously we'd all made a decision to come over, and it was, I could understand it, but in terms of you're working full time, we're just here like trying to do this home learning. We don't really see you. We might not, well, you know, we could have been in Hong Kong still. I could have still been doing this. I could have been doing this. And like, you know, it's okay for you because you've got something to really dig your teeth into, and like, you know, you've kind of got your new purpose. Whereas I just a bit lost really. So yeah, there was definitely like a little bit of like, more so the situation, I think. Like I wasn't like jealous of him that he had a job. It was more just the whole situation that I was like, well, I could have been here and we could have been doing this, and Kai and I could have been fine and being at school. Because at that point, I think Hong Kong was sort of the opposite. You guys were still in school.
I feel like we seesawed so many times.
Yeah, and then suddenly Hong Kong was a tough place to be.
How did you get yourself out of that? Can I just say though?
Yeah.
I think something that we had that was very similar to one another was probably this inability to sit with our feelings.
Yeah.
And definitely an inability to express our feelings. We were both really good at putting on a bit of a brave face. Yeah. Sweeping our problems under the rug.
Getting on with stuff.
Getting on with things.
Yeah.
And what would probably happen to both of us is that those things would bubble to the surface periodically every few months. Yeah. And it would be that one person to say that one thing that we kind of like, that was a straw that had broke the camel's back, and we'd kind of unload on that person. I think both of us used to do that a lot, definitely in sport. And I feel like that's an area that you have really made a bit of a 360 turn on. I should say 180 turn, not 360.
No, like you're right. And I mean, I think we've talked about it in like our book clubs or podcast clubs or whatever you want to call it. I think they were really, really helpful for me, like overall, but even more so during that period of time, you know, dialing in on a Monday, discussing the chapter or the podcast that we'd sort of highlighted to listen to or read, and then talk about it. And, obviously at that point it sort of comes to like reading certain things and how it applies to you or an experience that you might have had. And I think that was sort of super, super helpful and something that I really needed during that time. And yeah, because I wasn't able to be busy, I wasn't able to just go out and do stuff or work or whatever it was. There was definitely a lot more time for sitting down and being in your own head and being in your own thoughts and sitting with those and sort of processing everything. Because I think, like I said, like when we first arrived in Bangkok, it was all go, 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 because it's a new place.
Yeah.
And then obviously sort of a few months later, it wasn't busy anymore. So just sort of having that time to not reflect on not only on the move, but everything. Like, not like sort of questioning life, but just, that's when I did a lot of reflection about hockey, and all of that kind of thing, which I did a little bit before, but definitely not the amount I did when I was, when we moved to Bangkok. So I think it was maybe something that a really positive thing that I took out of a really tough time, having that time to do that, for sure.
Yeah. In hindsight, are you happy that you had that time in that space, even if it was hard in the moment?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's definitely made me hopefully I'm more empathetic towards other people and also myself. Like, I think, like you said, sort of, we're just people that get on with things. And sometimes it's okay not to be able to get on with things. It's okay to be like, I'm actually really struggling. And like I said to Mike, I was like, I don't have a purpose. Like, I just don't, I feel really lost. And like, it's okay to say that. Whereas I think probably a few years ago, like I would never have been able to say that. And definitely when I was playing hockey, it was like, nah, don't talk about feelings. Like, we're here to play hockey and yeah, that's it, kind of thing. So yeah, like definitely. So that was April to the end of school year. We were closed. The school was closed. And I remember we did like maybe an Airbnb with a friend in Hua Hin. So it's about a 3-hour drive or something from Bangkok. And then Mike had met a friend, and he and his family had actually moved to Hua Hin for like the foreseeable, basically, because everything was closed in Bangkok, and it was just a bit of a change of scenery. You're sort of closer to a beach. It was a bit more freedom. There were still a lot of restrictions. So we actually decided to do that as well. So we kind of packed up a bunch of stuff, chucked dumbbells and clothes, and chased our dog into the car. And we sort of lived in Hua Hin for like 6 weeks. So I think sort of having that online school and having the opportunity to do that, like during that still 6-week period, I could just feel myself like just having a much brighter outlook on everything. And
what do you think it was? Was it the change in environment?
Yeah, I think the change in environment,
So
being able to like get out. So we brought our bikes, and there was this huge like long bike lane basically that you weren't near any cars, so you could just do that. You get down to the beach like every morning. We used to take our dog, and just like those little things were just so important, like to just like my mindset really. And then we went back online to start the school year, but it just seemed so much easier. Like it wasn't like that sort of really down feeling of it. And it was only for I think maybe a week or so, and then we moved back to Bangkok. And then a few months later I think they were back in school. So yeah.
Have you got any like revelations, any like life-changing outlooks on life, anything that's you've taken out of this last 2 years that you're like, wow, I see things, I just look at things so differently now to maybe how I did 2.5 years ago?
It's funny, like I've always been like a relatively introverted person, and I definitely still am. But then I think before I was very much like, oh well, I don't need anyone else. I don't need to talk about anything through with anyone else. I can just like internalize it and chat to myself about it. And I think now definitely that's not the case. I'm still very introverted, and I like my own time, and I like my own space and to do things by myself sometimes. but I need people around me. Like just having that company, that connection is like super important. And I think it's definitely something that, when I didn't have it, I really recognized that I needed it, and I actually do really enjoy it. I think obviously coming from somewhere where I've grown up, somewhere like coastal where there's just constant different people coming through the door for their training, whether it's group classes, personal training, small groups, whatever it was, plus all the staff. You're just constantly around different people having a quick chat, and and then you go from that to not really speaking to another human being apart from like Mike and then Kai. It was so definitely the fact that I do need people around me.
That's been one of my biggest revelations through the last 2.5 years as well. It's just the importance of community and connection.
Yeah.
And I, like you, thought that I was quite an independent person, and I am an independent person actually, but there's a difference between being independent and being solitary.
Yeah.
And I think, when every time the gym would close and it's just being around like-minded people and having conversations and feeling like I'm a part of a community.
Yeah.
Is so important to me. And, I've talked about this a lot on other podcasts, but it's like the initial idea of me being a nomad and traveling the world, coaching people behind my laptop, which seemed so enticing because I'd be in these beautiful beaches and exploring the globe, doesn't actually appeal to me anymore.
Yeah.
There's parts of it, obviously, that I would love to be on beautiful beaches and explore the world, but, being surrounded by great people all the time. And I'm so lucky to literally say that the people I work with are actually my close friends as well, which is something that's very special and unique, and not many people have that. Yeah, it's definitely something that I really value now as well. What else? When we had a conversation a while ago, you had talked about this concept of there was something, you'd watched something about a girl dying. Someone had died. It was something to do with death.
So I remember,
and it had unlocked something in you.
You were like this nature person, like looking at different like fishing videos or something. Whereas Mike can't picture this, but this is like his worst nightmare, living in a van.
Yes.
But like van life has been something like, I don't want to live in a van.
Tiny homes.
Tiny homes.
Yeah.
Like it just super cool, like what
shit.
people can come up with. And I just like watching those kind of videos, like not necessarily because I probably would be terrible at building them, but just like watching what they do and like the little
converted
specs.
crate that turns. I love that.
Yeah, like what specs they put in and how practical it is. And like it's funny, obviously, like growing up in Hong Kong, you've got generally quite a small space to live in. So I've been quite used to living in a small apartment and maybe not having that much stuff because you can't really fit it in. And moving to Bangkok, what we paid for our tiny like 500 square foot apartment, we pay for a house. So now I live in this house and I was just like, I actually don't know what to do with all this space. I mean, to be honest, I'm very thankful that we had this space, really grateful that we decided on that, because when we were in lockdown, having that sort of different point of difference of like, that's the office and that's this. Separation, definitely helped. But I remember talking to you, and I think it was one of the calls that we had, and it was like quite a long call. And I was watching this video. And then I think because of the algorithm, again, I'm useless at this kind of thing, but I'm assuming because I watched that video, obviously more of that type of video pops up. Yeah. And this like common theme kept on popping up about this person. And I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. I just watched a video that she was in with like building her van out and it looked pretty cool, blah, blah, blah. And I think I'd said to you that actually these videos were popping up because she had been in the news and unfortunately she'd taken her own life. And like, I think you sort of asked me like, oh, well, and I said it was really weird for me because obviously I'd been watching her literally just then on the screen, like everything looked awesome, like her life and all of this. And I think, and then obviously seeing these other videos that I didn't really watch because I was like, what? And just, and then I think you asked me sort of like, oh, why did that trigger you so much? And, what did you sort of look into when you sort of felt that way? Like it really, like, I was like, it was really weird, like seeing someone there. Obviously I don't know this person at all. And then finding out that that person's actually no longer here. Have you reflected on that? Because I remember you kept on saying the same thing. You were saying that it's really strange this thing happened. And I remember just saying, what is strange about it? Like what's triggered you? What are you actually feeling? I don't know. Like I think whether it was just that on the outside, And this is everywhere. Like on the outside, everything looks amazing and everything looks really great for everyone. What they post on Instagram and social media looks fantastic and they're living the best life and all of this. But actually, when you remove that, what are they kind of going through? You
just never know, do you?
Yeah. And I think that sort of for me, like when I reflect about hockey, like I don't know what my other teammates were going through because I never asked them. And my assumption was they weren't giving their best effort. I always thought like...
Your assumption was they didn't care
yeah,
about
that
hockey.
they didn't care. I was here. We're all here putting in so much effort and all this time and sacrifice and you're just messing about. When actually, I don't know what they could be going through. Something at home that maybe they're having a bad day or whatever it might have been. And I think maybe that's part of it, like just being nice to people and maybe even asking them if they are okay, and talking and finding out a bit more about them. Because like even though we were teammates, if I'm honest, like I only knew probably a handful of those people. And again, like there was a bit of a language barrier because I don't speak any Chinese and they don't speak that much English. But again, that's also, I could have made more of an effort. So when I do look back at that kind of thing, I'm like, you know, I do regret not being a bit kinder to people sometimes. And like, I don't think I was on purpose trying to bully people and make people feel bad about themselves. I think, again, it was just what I wanted for the team. I couldn't communicate it well. So it just came out in this like really aggressive manner and like shouting and
which
like,
works for some people.
Which does work for some people. And I think like we sort of both said like that's all you used to see like in changing rooms, all this like I never was like, well, I wouldn't swear in team talks, but I definitely swore a lot on the pitch and it would just come out. And you know me, I don't swear at all.
Yeah.
So like literally I crossed that line and it was like, yeah. And again, like I'm like, I don't know really why it was like that, because that's not really who I am. Like I wasn't pretending to be someone else. It was just like, it would just come out. And I think it was just the frustration like so deep inside that I couldn't voice any other way.
That might have also been the feelings that were swept under the rug.
Yeah.
Coming out to the surface in like the highest stress moment, which is in the middle of a match or in a heated moment where emotions are running high.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's funny, like obviously I took it seriously. But then how easily I could, when I stopped playing hockey kind of seriously, how it was. Like when I think back, I'm like, well, it meant so much to me. Like even a random like league match that really in the grand scheme of things means nothing. Like it meant everything to me. And like, it was definitely, when I played hockey, like I could definitely get into that sort of flow state that everyone sort of talks about. Even when I think about it now, there's like things that I literally saw myself doing. There's like, I remember going into the top of the D where you have to shoot and literally just seeing this gap on the side of the goal.
Knowing you're just going to score.
And just like looking, and it was like I had like 10 seconds to put it there and just like hit it and went exactly where I wanted it. And like, just like little things like that, I can still take myself back to that feeling of what it was.
I can do that. And I do that a lot, actually. I think about times where it was just so effortless.
Yeah.
But I also think about times where it wasn't. And where perhaps I'd gotten to my own head and prevented myself from actually having the performance I could. And now I can link back making tackles, making passes, dropping balls, missing kicks to like when I was 10 years old still.
Yeah.
Like it's the memories are still so vivid and the moments and now it's nice to be able to see that in my memories and know why they happened. You know, like I know why I dropped that ball.
Yeah.
Because in the week before that game, all I was telling myself was don't drop the ball. You know, like I know why I missed that kick because I was more concerned about the coach watching me and me getting selected for a trial.
Yeah.
You know, like there's so many things that I piece back and reflect on my playing career all the time. And now that I have, I guess, the knowledge about why those things might happen, it's just nice because it almost creates closure. Because at the time in those moments you feel useless, or you feel You can't pinpoint why you have amazing performances, because you are in that flow state and you want to try and recreate those performances every time you play, but you don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And now it's nice being able to look back and have closure on it, to be like, okay, I can see that now.
Yeah.
And it's why I love genuinely why I still love working with athletes. And the medium now is CrossFit, but I just find it fascinating because I can see it all. I can see people
unfolding.
Yeah, and I can see them in the training environment. I can see them on the competition floor, and I just almost can see myself as that person making those same mistakes or executing something so well when just things are just right. Yeah.
I think when I also look back, like coaching some people, I kind of fell back into like old habits of how I would speak to people. And again, sort of reflecting and then having to sort of take a step back and be like, they're actually trying their best. And like, you can't get annoyed at someone for giving their full effort if that's what it is. And you sort of saying like, no, you've got to squat like this, and this is the only way to squat, is very like,
why can't you go heavier?
Yeah.
It really comes back down to empathy again, doesn't it? Which is what you talked about already. Is something that you feel like you've evolved and developed a lot of empathy in your recent years. Yeah. I think when I started playing like more of social hockey, I could definitely feel like sometimes I could feel it bubbling. But the difference was the way I would communicate it would be very different. Like over from 20 wherever it was to, let's say 28, it was very like aggressive and like very short, like blunt with people. And then I think definitely as I got older, it was like I'd be able to stop myself from saying something or reacting. It was like pausing for that split second and then actually think about the thing you're about to say or the decision you're about to make with someone. And I think definitely like that's got hopefully a little bit better. Like obviously as the years have gone past, and then all the sort of reflection I've done while I've been away. So for someone who previously could never ask for help, do you think you're in a position now where you can? I think I am, and I think I'm more open to help from many different people. I think again, when I look back at hockey, like the different coaches I had, I was super lucky to have so many different people being involved in my hockey career from all over the world. But there was definitely people that I really respected and would listen to versus other people that maybe I didn't respect as much, or it wasn't even to do with credentials or where they coached before. It was just for whatever reason, like, oh, well, they gave me this, I'm not going to really listen to that because what do they know kind of thing. Whereas, oh, well, this person I really respect, and, okay, if they've said this to me, I'm going to really try my best to do that. And I think now I'm just sort of open to everyone being sometimes more knowledgeable in certain areas than I am. So it's more open to like discussing anything with anyone and asking for help from whoever it is. Yeah. If there was one piece of advice you could give a younger you, what would it be? I felt like I knew that question was going to come. Maybe just the seriousness of it all. I think I got too caught up in everything, and I took everything way too seriously, where I think when the beginning, like I was just having fun. And I think when you're having fun, enjoying it, and sort of like we sort of said in some of our podcasts, like just being a good person, that's when your performance really shines. And when you're in your head, when you're wasting energy on other things, other people, because you can't control them, then obviously your performance suffers. I think just trying to relax a little bit more, take a deep breath before you react, and just don't take things so seriously. Do you think you're going to be able to give that advice to your son if you start to see him go down the similar route? Yeah, I think so. I think when I see him, Mike laughs because I think he sees a lot of
himself when he was younger, in Kai, more emotional as a person than I am.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of like,
yeah,
like you wouldn't really know if something was really exciting or like the worst news ever. That was just kind of the same facial expression.
very true.
But yeah, I think like now I'm a mum. I think probably the way I was like hard on myself, I try and think about not doing that to him, or like we said about his activities. Like, of course, there's things that I really would love him to do. I think Mike would love him to play rugby, but if he does, he does. And if he doesn't, he doesn't. We're not going to be forcing it or going, oh, we're going to live vicariously through you because we don't play these sports anymore. Just letting him be who he is and make his own decisions and support him through the things that he was interested in, I suppose.
Nice, Babsy. I think that's a great place to end it.
Thanks.
Thank you thank you so much for sharing and being on here. I know it's not something that you necessarily feel comfortable with, but I think you crushed it, and I think you did seem very comfortable in it.
Thank you.
Babsy, until next time.
Now
you can dry your hands and clench your fists.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, guys.